Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 11 Week 4 Power Rankings. Week 4 out of 7 in the books. I'm your host, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. As always, I'm joined by Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
Let's hop into it. Week 4 is starting now. I get to start off in the land of the Bouffalant, the Buffalo team taking on the undefeated Wooper Troopers, but no more. Second week in a row, we get two 6-0 sweeps of a previously undefeated team, the Noctowls first, and the Bouffalant taking this one. Early game rocks trade, the Nidoqueen taking a page from Nidoking's book last week and getting off amazing trades itself, bringing Celesteela very low alongside the P2 and playing around the Trick Room. Lantern burns the Pex, then commence the plan. Lantern hard switch to cart on a Baneful Bunker, step 1. Step 2 is the substitute as Noct doesn't break the stub. Step 3, the next Baneful Bunker, Sword Stance up. It's just about GG from there. D-Knight does break the sub, but as it's the Troopers' last win con, they try to save it, meaning Cart gets another sub off on another switch, activating Salakberry, and now it's GG with the +1 speed. Cart moving atop the KO leaderboard with 6 just this match. Next up, the Noctowls taking on the Kanto Kinglers and walk away with a 5-0 win. We start with a special Jirachi tearing things apart. Is it trapped by Magnezone or is it trapped with Jirachi? The first Rain Sweeper is out Seismitoad, but oh yeah, that's a Rain Dish Blastoise and a Storm Drain Cradily. No problems here. Jirachi back in to annoy the Lando, who does set up a little bit, but as Torn takes that down, oh yeah, that's a Hurricane Torn in the rain, so Pelipper is down too. Torn goes down after setting up that Tailwind, but Kingdra and Kingler will be easy pickings. Kingler down to Jirachi. Cradily walls the Kingdra all day long when it's locked into a water move. That is a clean 5-0 win. Next up, the last undefeated team goes down. The Agrons dropping 2-0 to the New Britain Rockruff, who are finding themselves back in contention. Aggressive play with Garchomp early allows Rocks to go up for both sides in exchange for damage and a Toxic on the Mudsdale. A good pivot into Decidueye, who now has the chance to click the Sword Stance button. After 2 of those, even Tangrowth goes down to a Poltergeist, and Coco goes down to 16% from a sneak before the Revenge. It's forced to just defog the rocks away before getting revenged itself by Sylveon, but here comes that Rockruff luck again, burned immediately by the blue flare. Crawdaunt comes in to try and revenge, but Sylveon hangs on with just 3% to take down maybe the MVP for the Agrons in one hit. Victini can finish that off, but Moltres threatens that out. Mudsdale is able to come back in, but by that point, Glowking is setting up Iron Defense. EQ, oh no, he found the weakness policy. That's going to be a dead horse and a dead Victini before it's low enough for Vaporeon to take it out. It started a 4v1 there. Surely it's over, right? Toxic, miss. Hurricane, miss. It's starting to look like a repeat of week 1. Ice Beam is chipping away. Wish healing up between Hurricanes would start missing a bit too often for the Rockruff's liking. After the Berserk boost, though, they'll 2 a KO. But the freeze, oh no, not like this, but an immediate thaw into the Fire Ref will save the Rockruff. A 2-0 win for them. Next up, the Close Combat Club and the Incineroar are both trying to get back on track, but it's the Close Combat Club who emerged from their 6-0 loss victorious with their own 6-0. We see early that Quillfish is the answer for Salamence. The T-Wave and Haze make sure of that alongside the cheeky Ice Beam. A good amount of pivoting around. You know what to expect from these two. And then as Shedinja comes into Lele, it fires off a Future Sight. With that, the club removes rocks and does 96% to Rotom Heat. Jeez. Eventually, Corv catches the Buzzwole with the Brave Bird. A really good job bluffing. He didn't have the Shedinja coverage, but it does let Clefable Aromatherapy off the para on Salamence. Third time in against Shedinja, and Lele finally reveals its way to hit the carcass, Shadow Ball. Clef wishes the Salamence up, but here's the Quillfish again, more pivoting, and Rotom is the next to get wished up. But at what price? The most costly. My poor, dear, precious Tangela going down to a single Future Sight. Just tragic. I'll remember this. Cure the Salamence again, Lele in again, Future Sight again. I think we're starting to see the plan of attack. Slightly different this time. Stone Edge from Crook takes out the healed up Rotom. Well, it's all or nothing for the Incineroar. Salamence trying to set up in front of Quillfish, who takes its time paralyzing, pain splitting, hazing sometimes, and ice beaming sometimes to get it low. It's gotten Salamence very low, but the partner in crime, Clefable, is trying to help. Quillfish back into para for a 4th time, but maybe it's time for Lele to clean up. Future Sight takes down the 75% Clefable and the Fresh Latios with the Lorb Draco to clean up the 6-0 at the end. Next up, the Steamrollers claiming the 2-0 victory over the Psyducks. Nothing flashy in this one, just some solid, consistent play from the Steamrollers. Gastro is the answer to both Flygon and Zapdos, but Scizor is the one early game spreading Toxic into the Zapdos. Get in the Keldeo for free, get that Sacred Sword onto Umbreon, easy. Magnezone does get a really nice Toxic onto Gastro, and Basculin. It's Basculin week, guys, trying to get in on the action, does half to Urshifu and half to Zapdos before going down itself. Keldeo easily takes care of the remainder of Zapdos' health. Flygon trying to D-dance up in front of the Toxic Gastro, which is very pressured this game, and gets to Ice Beam Flygon down to 3%, and they trade out EQ for Life Orb Recoil. Magneton is walling everything, takes down the Scizor, and we're now in a 3v3 scenario, with all of Jazz Fast Sweepers remaining. He'll win this trade war. Azelf takes down Magneton, Chandelure with a Scarf revenges that, but Regieleki goes Burr and cleans up the last two. A pretty simple 2-0. Next up, we've got the feature match. It is a showdown between the Boulders, the Wobbuffets, and the Boulders, taking the surprise victory here. Cryo into Heatran is a bad matchup, so Hippo comes in and gets a crucial Toxic onto the Milotic. No burn for you. Cryo does remove rocks, but trades its own life. And the return high horsepower from Excadrill into Milo misses. Great taunt, though, from Feeny into the Milotic. We're starting to see a pattern for the Boulder's success. The return miss. Megahorn from Bulu misses the Rillaboom. Huge damage potential missed out there on the double. Hippo is going to set up Sand again for the Drill, who reveals it is SD. That could be a problem in the Sand, and that means Milotic will be the sack. Diancie walls the Revenging Thundy pretty well and goes the opposite end of speed spectrum with the Trick Room set up. A little chip onto Thundy with the Phineas. Trick Room expires. Oh no, it's Trapinch time. 83% with first impression. That's not enough to KO the Rillaboom, but just a Leech Seed in return. It lives to see another day. Time to set up Sandstorm again, though, and then sack the Rillaboom to the Bulu, and Excadrill is back out. Two Iron Heads take care of that previously mentioned weakened Thundy, and it's starting to pick apart the Wobbuffets. Diancie can't KO the Trapinch, but it does get some defense boosts, letting it set up another Trick Room, and most importantly, get some more damage onto the Crobat. Trapinch revenges, does over 50% to Feeny. What a mon, but goes down in return. We're starting to get to the end game. Sack Hippo to Hornleech for one more ride with Sand, and Drill is out. Steve doesn't like the Ironhead Calc, so that's an SD from Drill on the switch. Horsepower the Heatran, Ironhead the Crobat, Ironhead the Bulu, and that'll do it. A 2-0 thanks to the Drill. And finally, the Burbs facing off with the Lairon, and the Burbs get their second W. Some residual from Leech Seed onto Nidoking early lets in Latias. Is that a substitute? Registeel breaks those with Seismic Toss, but two Aura Sphere crits and a Toxic Miss means Latias gets out of that one healthy. Double Iron Bash, though, just the second hit after breaking sub does 81%. Oh my goodness. Lightning Rod Pincurchin is in, Scald Burn the Dragapult, and survive the Draco in 10%, and set up a layer of spikes. It will be sacked to Nidoking, though, and Registeel in turn sacked to the Obstagoon. Ferrothorn is a good answer to Melmetal and gets to Leech Seed with the Dragapult, taking damage from everywhere but a good double into Nidoking. The Thorn still gets up rocks before going down, as there is just no answer to the King. Well, except maybe Revenging Zero Aura. It and Archeops exchange damage, but Zero is faster, so another one for the Cat. Volcanion takes a ton from Melmetal, but does get to Toxic the Slowbro, who kindly heals it up. Thank you very much. It future sights, allowing Melmetal to dodge a Steam Eruption. Volcanion goes down to the delayed attack 2-2, but Zero Aura is one of those twos, or something. And Plasma Fist takes care of the final two mons that they layer on. A 2-0 for the Burbs, and that is what happened in Week 4. Now, you may have noticed a few different mons here, too. We didn't get to talk about them last week because there weren't any. We had quite a few trades going on. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about some of the top teams in the league making a bunch of transactions, starting here with the Noctowls and a couple of key members that they've been using this season.
Yep, the Noctowls, immediately following their Week 3 match, traded away 4 of their members, the Thunderous Incarnate, the Slowking, who was a big member of their team for Week 3, the Caparaja, and the Gyarados, and in return picking up Rotom Fan, Blastoise, Jirachi, and Tornadus. Looking at this trade, they saw that Jirachi was available and really wanted to get up there to grab it, so they consolidated some roles. Downgraded the Thunders to the Rotom, the Slowking to the Blastoise. Went down to a single water type. A lot of trades to make the points to get that Jirachi, which will be, a key member from them moving forward.
Absolutely. The Steel type before was a Caparage, and as much as I like it, in this sort of team comp, it really looks like the Steel type is needed. The other thing I really want to mention about these trades, that is 4 Pivot Mons that we see up top, as opposed to 1 that was traded away. That's definitely going to help them out quite a bit. These are just a lot of high-tier Mons that are being moved around. This is definitely a high-impact, high-value trade all the way around. Curious to see how this is going to work out, and maybe we'll see some of these free agents again on other teams down the road. We've got another one to go over here. It's the Wooper Troopers just before our match for Week 4. Making some more transactions. I get to see Tyranitar again.
Yep, the Wooper Troopers trading away Zapdos Galar, Gigalith, and Lycanroc Midday, picking up Tyranitar, Porygon 2, and Mesprit. I don't have as much insight into these trades, but they did, wanted a weather setter, and, Tyranitar is definitely a better weather setter than Gigalith. I'm guessing they wanted more bulk on their team, getting some more neutral bulk like the Mesprit and P2. So overall, just kind of bulking up the team and trading away some of their offensive potential, especially with the loss of that Zapdos Galar.
There's a couple things to stand out too. Obviously, Trick Room mode is now turned on with the P2 and Mesper. P2 kind of infamous for that, plus the slow pivot of Teleport, which is something you really didn't have. Getting rid of the U-turn from Zapdos, but the slow pivot I think is very valuable. It also actually finally introduces an interaction with the ground type that isn't 2x, 4x, or immune. Or resist. Finally get any neutrality to ground on the Troopers, which is kind of funny that it took this long for that to happen, but here we are finally. And then for the final transaction we get to go over just a little bit, it's your Bouffalant, making 4 transactions near the bottom of the list of their tiers and points.
Yep, Bouffalant trading away Slurpuff, Mantine, Jolteon, and Pinsir, picking up Rabombi, Sock, Lantern, and Kangaskhan. I'm sure you can speak more to these trades, but my understanding was Slurpuff just really wasn't doing it for you, so you were looking for a different fairy type with a higher speed, patching up those higher speed tiers, especially because you were looking to trade away Jolteon, picking up Lantern as kind of compressing that electric and water immunity of the Mantine and Jolteon. But yeah, outside of that, would you like to elaborate on your trade some?
Yeah, those two are definitely the big ones. Slurpuff, I just could not find a time to bring it in. Part of the original plan was to try and grab something like an Indeedee to pair with it, to have one of those small cores. I've been a little infamous for grabbing a couple of those in recent memory. But Slurpuff by itself just really wasn't quite cutting it, especially with the other threats, and combined with everything else in the team, it wasn't doing it quite as much as I had hoped. Having kind of a faster Monta that can still spam fairy moves and still set down the sticky webs was important to me. Lantern, definitely great roll compression for the other two. I did bring each of Jolteon and Mantine, compressing them to one I think will help a ton. And Pinsir, while I really like Pinsir, the 85 speed tier is a little more necessary than a 20-point mon, even maybe a 60-point mon, but honestly the calcs I've done so far with Sock I've been really impressed by, and this mon I think could surprise some people. Kangaskhan at the base 90 speed and up from a 20 is just a nice little bonus on top of that, and gives me a little bit of a wish passing potential as well, now that I've gotten rid of the Slurpuff and Jolteon. So it's this low tiers, but I want to make sure that I can actually bring them and threaten them, and I think this will help a little bit more with that. Of course, we get to talk about the Bouffalant a little bit more here, too, because we're going to go right to the power rankings, and here we go, our top 8. A weird little quirk here is that we have 6 teams at 3-1, so it was a little bit tougher, potentially, to rank all of those. We'll talk about our rationale for the placements in just a little bit, but we'll talk about the teams going down in order just a little bit. We had the Bouffalant and Troopers match first. It was a 6-0. I'm not sure how much we can talk about it, but it was the Troopers' first loss in Draft League.
That's right. After a very successful beginner league season last time, coming in undefeated. I'm worried I may have underseeded them significantly, but finally getting that first loss, and it's kind of a rite of passage getting that big loss to IllLogic, the 6-0, where just able to wall the entire team and get in that one mon that just needs a couple turns to set up and clean up the game.
And if you all have been following the power rankings as well, I feel like I got a lot of my prep from the research that we do just here, being able to see kind of the tendencies of the Troopers. They've been relying so heavily on things like the Celesteela clicking Leech Seed and the Toxapex stalling things out. What better way to try and take advantage of that than something like the substitute setup? And I actually had 2 of those mons on the team and a couple of pivots out to them that could take advantage of things like the Leech Seeds or the Toxapex, which really can't do anything. It can't even break the sub of Kartana in one hit. I think we all remember our first loss in draft, or maybe even more so, getting 6-0'd or disgustingly 5-0'd, or throwing a game hypothetically against a Darmanitan Galar. Those times do happen to all of us, and maybe this will be an awesome experience for the Troopers that they can look back on and say, wow, remember when I did this, but now we're able to get to another spot. So maybe just another bump along the road. What do you think about the team overall, though, too? It's a 3-0 team going down to 3-1, but they're still 3-1 and still in a pretty good position overall.
Yeah, 3-1 team, still looking good overall. This loss kind of does shake confidence in them a little bit. They're shown to be fallible, and maybe these top teams can pick up the wins. But looking forward, they have not the easiest schedule forward, with some 2-2 teams, the Wobbuffets and Boldors, and then the I believe 1-3 Psyducks. So they don't have any more 3-1 teams to play of this current week. But still, some historically strong teams in the Wobbuffets, the Boldors, who are, got a big win this week over the Wobbuffets. So definitely a way into the playoffs. Not the easiest path, but not the hardest.
We still have some confidence in them, of course, moving forward. But when we'll talk about a little bit, there is some separation potentially in there too as we move on to the Noctels, another team that we just have a lot of confidence in. I was telling you a little bit beforehand, and maybe I had jumped the gun last week. I kind of want to talk about their Week 3 match a little bit and how impressive that was, getting a 6-0 over a previously undefeated team, especially a Close Combat Club team that we'll talk about in a little bit that continues to impress as well. Noctels just doing it like they always do. Another easy victory for them.
Yeah. Coming out here this week and dominating the Kinglers. They end up lose them on in the rain, which is difficult to not do, as these rain attackers can really pack a punch. But that's all it took, was losing that one mon, especially getting up that key tailwind, making that last drain not matter. Able to just compare normal speeds. Jirachi comes out and closes the thing out. Jirachi really doing a lot of work for the Noctels here in the first week they brought it.
Yeah, we got to see 3 of their new mons already, plus a low-tier mon in Kraydilly, getting used to things very quickly, it appears. And similar to my team as well this week, only had to bring out 4 mons to make things work. Didn't even have to have the big physical tank Wheezing or another water resistant, the Komodo, come out. It's just very impressive that Noctels are able to do this every single week. Only the one loss, and frankly, from week 1, it seems like such a far cry from what they were doing back then. I just have a lot of confidence in the Noctels moving forward. I'm very impressed with them overall.
Oh yeah, most definitely. They definitely picked it up since then. Taking out a lot of good teams here. Wins over the Boulders and Club, who are on their list of Kinglers this week. They do have some difficult games ahead of them. The Rockruff, who were a little bit on an upswing and made it onto the list this week, and of course that Week 7 matchup with the Bouffalant. But at 3-1 already, they're looking pretty safe to make it into the playoffs, as long as they win at least 1, maybe 2 of their remaining matches.
Here's hoping we can both win both of our remaining matches, 5-1, and take the last match a little bit more lightly. I think would be best for me. A couple teams that are taking things quite seriously: the Agrons and the Rockruff. The Agrons suffering their first loss as well to the Troopers now, and the Rockruff an impressive enough win that they were able to make it onto the list. I don't think the Agrons necessarily played poorly. I think this was finally a culmination of the Rockruff's game plan finally coming around without too much terrible bad luck. What do you think about the Agrons' performance here?
I mean, we're finally seeing, maybe the limits of their slower, bulkier team. A team that was able to take advantage of it, kind of weather the storm some, and get some of their kind of slower pieces in there, like that Glow King, to really start punching some holes through the other team.
Similarly, the Sylveon too. Kind of those mid-tier starting to take advantage of that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, the Agrons. There were a couple times in there, right, where it felt like they were just so susceptible to these setup mons, which Dietite has brought several times now. The Glow King we've seen set up every time. The Calm Mind Sylveon, of course. Even Garchomp and Moltres, while they didn't set up, their raw power and the ability to threaten the setup, I think they would have found plenty of opportunities to do so as well against this slower, bulkier style team. Maybe it doesn't quite even have the offense to back that up either. Mudsdale and Tangrowth and Vaporeon, all of course great bulky pivot pieces, but how are they going to break down the opposing team when they're threatening to sweep right in front of your face? Maybe that is what the limit is for the Agrons, and maybe Dietite is just showing us what we need to do.
I mean, we should have seen this sooner. The Agrons have always been weak to setup sweepers, and this is just showing it. Even the Agrons' typical cleaner and the Crawdaunt really not able to do much here. Gets an Aqua Jet off on the Sylveon to do around 50%, but the Sylveon was just healthy enough to hang on there, take it out without issue. So I'm not sure if that was a roll or more defense investment on the Sylveon than he was inspecting, but kind of throwing away his main cleaner that early really did come back to bite him as the match went on.
Of course, the easiest way to avoid that is to not throw away anything at all. The Close Combat Club at number 4 with a 6-0 win after getting 6-0 themselves. What a great turnaround from them, even against the Incineroar here. Really nice pivoting, just kind of what we expect from John, about the cleanest game that we expect from John as well. And considering his style of play, everything went his way.
Yeah, everything went great. Very, very safe switching, making sure, everything comes in. Like against the Shedinja, always switching to the Corviknight, because Corviknight is definitely going to wall it, doesn't want to risk, a shadow, well, not a shadow sneak into Lele because terrain, but, doesn't want to risk anything funny with that, doesn't want to, over predicting, tried getting the shadow ball right away, just taking his time, switching things out, and able to pick apart this Incineroar team in the long game.
I like that he didn't even have to go just textbook, here's what you need to do and here's what you need to do next. As I alluded to, he saved the Brave Bird a couple of turns in a row against the Shedinja, which actually I thought was really smart, and it ended up getting a KO on something else, as well as threatening out the Shedinja every other time after that. And then also, as you said, finally getting the Shadow Ball onto it as well. It looked like it just couldn't quite hack it in the prediction game. I would have loved to see something like Pain Split onto that too. Wouldn't that have been fun?
Oh, most definitely. Also on the club this week, I really want to highlight that Lele coming in here, future sighting, just applying massive pressure to the other team, especially once Shedinja was being threatened out and was gone. That future sight was just demolishing the Incineroar team, and more or less every time Lele got in, a couple turns later, the Incineroar had to pick a sack.
It definitely like that with Shedinja being the only immunity to it, and you could very easily switch out the next turn to something that does threaten it, and now you're either going to lose the Shedinja or just lose a mon. We saw a couple of times, like my poor precious Tangela. So pretty impressive there from the Combat Club. And another team that just had a very simple game plan and executed well, the Steamrollers down there at number 6. It's just a 2-0, but they didn't have to make any fancy plays or anything out of the ordinary. If anything, it was Basculin week, but even Basculin was able to put in a good amount of work, so kudos to the Steamrollers for just taking care of business.
Yep, I mean, they have mentioned how this battle was just, attack what's in front of them, don't overpredict, and they definitely have the team to accommodate that play style. The kind of speed and pivoting available to them allows them to, not have to make predictions all the time. They can, play it safe, switch out when they need to, and they had the favorable matchup here. Had the better team going in, were able to build around that, switch around, and always end up in favorable enough positions that just clicking the obvious move ended up working.
Definitely a safe team overall. You see things maybe like the Azelf and the Basculin that aren't quite as safe, but even then, the Azelf is so fast, it outsped everything that the Cydex could have brought aside from the Excelgor. Basculin actually looked like it had a pretty nice matchup against quite a few mons in here, just really worrying about Scarfs and those couple of base 100 mons. It was really textbook play from Jed, and that's really what we've been expecting from him all this time, just going out there, making the right plays, and doing it. That is going to be all of the 3-1 teams. Again, that's quite a few. We had 6 of them overall, the Bouffalant through the Steamrollers. But before we go into the individual ones, we did kind of break apart. We kind of felt like the top 3 were probably a little bit separated from the bottom 3. Maybe the club kind of creeps up there a little bit. But talk to us a little bit, Steve, about why we made the decisions we did to rank these 1 through 6, again, with potentially a little bit of separation even between the 3-1 teams.
So the Bouffalant seemed like a clear one to us, previously being ranked 3rd, both of the undefeated teams losing, and specifically getting that 6-0 win over the previously undefeated team. Kind of gave them the nudge we felt they needed to get up to that number 1 spot. Noctowls following closely behind, of course, having, as mentioned, that 6-0 win last week against, at that time, the undefeated Close Combat Club. And I mean, even now, they are also 3-1. So both of these top 2 teams with 6-0 wins over other 3-1 teams. The Aggron have had pretty solid performance this season. Of course, they had the close loss this week to the Rockruff. Just a 2-0 loss. So we're not moving them down too much, and we feel like their past performance gives them enough of an edge over these other teams to kind of edge them out here, as well as not losing in such a huge fashion. Moving on, then the Close Combat Club. We kind of touched on it. Strong performance, and then just that one bad loss to a good team. Otherwise, having wins over some good teams themselves. Wins over the Rockruff, and then some other teams as well. So enough that we kind of felt getting the 6-0, getting a 6-0 is impressive. They can have the number 4. Troopers, of course, taking that 6-0-6 loss, moving them down. When it came to Troopers versus Steamrollers for that last spot, the biggest thing was just the teams they faced. The Wooper Troopers, of course, having some historically stronger opponents so far. Beating the Burbs and then losing to the Bouffalant. Of course, bad loss to the Bouffalant, but having some of the historically stronger teams there. The The Steamrollers have also lost to the Bouffalant. Not as bad, but and Chad can feel free to blame me for this, Chad. The rest of the schedule hasn't been as impressive. We'll see in the next couple weeks as they start getting some more historically strong teams. But for now, we haven't seen big enough wins against lower-seeded teams to justify moving them up any further.
Yeah, it seems like the playoffs are really the time when Chad comes out to shine. As long as he keeps it up well enough to make the playoffs, which if he was number 6, yeah, he'd be making the playoffs, then potentially be a bigger threat than the power rankings may show. But I think overall I agree, nothing more than I believe a 3-0 win so far this season will keep him down there for now. Moving on to the 2-2 teams, boy, there were quite a few to talk about. We'll actually talk about both of the final 2 matches here. First off, of course, the feature match, the Boulders versus the Wobbuffets. This was actually just a blast to watch. The 2-0 for the Boulders, kind of a surprising win, but you each really had a fantastic bond in the matchup for each other, the Drill and the Bulu.
Yeah. Going into the match, I knew Bulu, my mon, had a great matchup. The Boulders, all of their bulky mons had that grass weakness. They have a couple, resistant like the Drift Limb and the Rillaboom and the Hawlucha. I guess the Bouffalant, although it's pretty frail and still gets one shot by Woodhammer. But, Bulu with a fantastic matchup. However, the fantastic matchup that prevailed was Excadrill with the speed in the sand. And that's something that's really scary about this Boulders team is just the sweepers they have available to them. Excadrill in the sand, Hawlucha popping either a Grassy Seed or a Misty Seed or, could even prop something like a White Herb. Can punch through teams. And then, of course, there's just the consistent Rillaboom as a physical offense to back them up. The 3 of those, and Blount on the special side, lots of offensive pressure there that is really hard to handle.
Absolutely true. And I do want to point out again to it, I had mentioned a little bit in the recap, I think he just did a great job of breaking down the answers that there were to this drill. All right, we didn't end up seeing, I believe, Rock Slide on this one. I don't think we even saw the 4th move on it at all. But just breaking down the Thundurus, breaking down the Crobat, getting damage onto those such that Excadrill could come out and sweep, I think was very key. And it wasn't even necessarily sweep, it was just come in multiple times to break things down or get 1 KO this time and being able to set up Sand a 4th time in the matchup, I think was key for him too. But this was also Trapinch week, and that was actually a lot of fun to see too.
Yeah, Trapinch did very well. Coming in, Trapinch's main job was, of course, Rillaboom coming in, maybe as a revenge or, as a pivot, coming in able to first impression it for a massive chunk. Of course, not one-shotting it, but doing, a significant portion that if it has, a decent amount of chip ahead of time, it would remove it. And then also benefiting from Trick Room set by the Boulders. Trapinch able to come in and use that, send out some Earthquakes, doing massive damage to a couple of the bulkier mons on the Boulders team.
Right, I think was definitely the best match of the week, if not the closest there as well. May have ended up coming down to a damage roll / a switch at the end. Definitely go check out the Burbs commentary on that. But speaking of, we left them off the list, but we would be remiss if we missed talking about their match in the discussion of 2-2 teams. The Burbs, this one actually ended up being quite close as well, with Zero able to clutch it out at the end. Both mons down below half for the 2 remaining for the Burbs. But still, pretty impressive seeing Zero put in that much work this week.
Yeah, coming in, having a kind of a surprise set for his opponent who thought they could get the jump on it with a Scarf. Scarf Zero, of course, countering and coming out and really putting in a lot of work, able to, always maintain that fastest mon and clean up the opposing team.
Even got some fun things like the purposeful lightning rod on Pincurchin, and actually a substitute on Latias, which was kind of interesting there too. Overall, relatively straightforward match, but overall also pretty well played by the Burbs and the Lairon. Lairon still haven't found that W, but man, they've just been playing better and better, and I would watch out if I were someone who's playing them in, I don't know, say week 6.
Week 6, huh? I haven't looked at the schedule, but it sounds like someone will be. Is that you?
It may or may not be me. However, they're not one of the 2-2 teams that we are talking about. There were 4 2-2 teams. Frankly, we're actually very impressed with all 4 of them, but we're not doing a top 10. It's just the top 8 because 8 teams make the playoffs. So, Steve, we had the Boulders, we had the Rockruff who made the list, and also the Burbs and the Wobbuffets who fell short. Take us through that a little bit and why we decided to put the Boulders and Rockruff at the end of the list over the other 2.
So the Boulders at 7 came down to their remaining schedule. Looking at what they've done so far, they only have losses to the Noctowls and Bouffalant, the preseason and current 1 and 2 teams. They've picked up, a notable win against myself, and of course an earlier win against St. Cinnamoroar. But also looking forward at the rest of the Boulders schedule, it's one of the easiest schedules remaining in the league. Games against the current undefeated, the current winless Laron, the current winless Kinglers, and then the 3-1 Troopers. So a fantastic remaining schedule for the Boulders, where even at 2-2 right now, I'd say they are probably a favorite to make the playoffs just based on that remaining schedule alone. That doesn't mean they can go home and not worry about it. They definitely still need to show up and give it their all. We've mentioned the Larons getting better and better. The Kinglers with that very heavy rain team that if you're not ready for, will surely wash you away. But very reasonable to pick up 1 or 2 more wins and qualify for the playoffs. We slid in the Rockruff over the Burbs, who were kind of our main 2 we were thinking of for that last spot, mainly for the strength of opponent in the last week. The 2 teams overall, looking at it, we felt very close about them and ended up giving the nod to the Rockruff just because they've defeated the previously undefeated Agrons. So that gave them the nod. And we left the Wobbuffets off because although the Wobbuffets have some big wins over the current number 1 and 2 teams, they only lost to those teams. The Wobbuffets also have now dropped 2 in a row and seem to be on a downward spiral, as much as I don't like to say it.
I think next week will determine quite a bit for these teams. For example, as we move into the matches for next week, we do see a very critical matchup there at the very top. The Bouffalant and Burbs. Let's say the Burbs get that W. They're moving up not just in the top 8, probably skipping past a few teams up to a very impressive 3-2. Steve, are there a couple other matches in here that you think we need to keep our eyes out on as we're starting to get closer to the playoffs?
I mean, there are a lot of matchups between these teams that were borderline. Any of the matches with the 2-2 teams, the Rockruff and the Noctowls, same thing. This was a 2-2 team that we gave the slight edge to, and they're also going up against an impressive Noctowls team. So same things to be said about that. For the other teams, the Wobbuffets and Troopers. The Wobbuffets a little bit on a downward spiral. The Troopers handed their first loss. This is a chance for both teams to really stabilize and kind of say that they're actually here and deserve a spot. And Steamrollers and Agron should also be an interesting game. Two 3-1 teams going at it. This will kind of be a chance for the Steamrollers to show that they deserve something more than being towards the bottom half, and maybe a win here is enough to push them up into that top 4 or so.
I think it's similarly important for the Agrons, too, trying to get another big win under their belt after their first loss. We saw what the Close Combat Club was able to do after handed their first loss. Let's see if maybe the Agrons can turn that around, or if the Steamrollers are just going to keep winning after a Week 1 loss. So that's going to do it from us. Look forward to Week 5 for sure. Again, we're starting to get down into the playoffs nitty-gritty. It's still going to be at least another couple weeks, I would think, until we get some lock-ins for playoffs. But the race is heating up, so definitely join us next time.